good morning. My name is Jon Witt, and this is a class in developing basic movements. So I'm going to do most of the class on the floor, probably all of it. I have a strap, I have a block to help with the techniques that I'm going to be using today. But if you don't have them, there's other ways you can do it. It's just really to help with, towards the end, I'm going to do some assisted stretching, and the strap can be really nice for that. I find as people age, it's more difficult to get up and down from the floor. So that's what this class is basically going to help strengthen your abdomen. I'm going to do quite a bit of floor work where I'm adjusting the lower body. And then again, we'll get into the stretching. But I'm going to start on my back. So when you come down, just basically having my lower back into the floor and my head is down and my knees are over my hips, and I'm working on just getting my ribs to stay in and my lower back down. So I'm going to take my hands just up over my shoulders or over my chest, and I'm bringing my right arm overhead and my left leg forward. So I'm keeping the abdomen in, the ribs in, and then I'm bringing the arms back up over the chest, and then the right leg is forward and the left arm is back overhead. It's a bit of a coordination, so you want to keep the left knee over the pelvis. And then I'm switching arm and leg. So right arm overhead, left leg forward. You could point the bottom foot, or you could flex it. Hands up over the chest, left arm overhead, right leg forward. And then one more time, taking the right arm overhead and the left leg forward. Last time, left arm overhead, right leg forward. And then bringing the arms up and bringing the feet down. So you could have the feet a little bit wider than the hips, have the hands directly over the elbows, and lift the heels of your feet and lift your hips. So just a different variation. When your heels are up, it's a little bit easier on your lower back. You prefer your heels down, of course you could have your heels down. When my heels are up, I'm trying to accentuate more of a lift through my upper back. So just take a couple deep breaths here. I'm going to lower my heels, but still maintain my hips at the same level. And then you can kind of see what actually is better for you. So I'm bringing my upper back into the floor, my mid back down, my low back down, my pelvis down. And then I'm going to lift the heels again up off the floor. I'm going to lift my pelvis off the floor, then my lower back, then my mid back, then my upper back. And say you just want to stay, you stay, right? I'm lowering the heels, lowering the upper back, lowering the mid back, lowering the low back and the pelvis. One more time, I'm lifting the heels, lifting the hips, lifting through the lower back, predominantly lifting through the upper back. And if you can, pull the shoulders back a bit more. So often I find people need more activation in the shoulders. Not that it should be rigid, but I'm lowering the heels, maintaining the hips, bringing the upper back down, the mid back, the low back, and then I'm going to take my block, and then I'm holding my block over my right shoulder. My left arm is out to the left. My left leg is straight, and then I'm just rolling to the side. So say you had an injury on your arm, or might be able to just roll here, but you can still feel that the abdomen is active. So I'm going to lift to my elbow and then lift to my hand, and then I'm just looking up to the block, right? Pushing strong through the left hand. Then I'm slowly going to the left elbow, going to the left shoulder, rolling onto my back. I'm going to roll to the left side, to the elbow, up onto the hand, and then I'm going to push through the hand if I can. I'm going to lift my hips, but maybe you're just here. Say you have something in your shoulder or your hand you can't lift up. Just stay down, but I'm going to lift my pelvis, and then as I'm lifting up, say it's really difficult. It might not be that you're not strong. It might be just your setup is a little bit off. So as I'm coming down with the hips, I'm going to go to the elbow, going to the shoulder, rolling onto my back. Last time, to the elbow, right? Coming up. Try not to make the motion jerky, right? Lift the hips, push to the heel of the foot, right? Move the weight around in the hand, just so that you're not wearing out any part of the hand or the wrist. So bring the hips down, slowly go to the elbow, slowly go to the shoulder and onto your back, just so that people can see better. I'm just switching my sides. Obviously, you could stay where you're at. So my right arm's out to the right, my left arm is directly over my left shoulder. I'm rolling to my right side. And remember, you could just be here, but add tension into the abdomen, then going to the elbow, and then possibly coming up onto the hand. You can look up to the block, push strong through your right hand, like feel tension in the shoulder, then go to the right elbow, slowly go to the right shoulder, onto your back, rolling to the right side, to the abdomen, right? Using the abdomen to the elbow, back up onto the hand. Now, again, play around with where your hand is, then push through the hand, lift through the hips, elevate through the pelvis. So you really want more extension if you can. It's a bit of a twist. So the hips are down, slowly going to the elbow, to the shoulder, onto your back, your head is down. Last time, to the right, to the elbow, to the hand, use the abdomen, push through the right hand, lift the hips, right? Use your fingertips, bringing your hips down, back to the elbow, slow to the shoulder, and then onto your back, right? So here, just for a few breaths, lift the heels again, lift the hips, lift the chest. So when your feet are elevated, when the feet are higher for certain backgrounds, it's less lower back, it's more upper back. So it's good to have your feet elevated if you're working on deeper back bends. So I'm going to bring my upper back to the floor, my mid back down, my low back, and my pelvis. And just take a few deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. And then I'm going to roll to my right side. I'm going to use my hands. I'm going to come up. And then when I come up, this is where I'm going to get into like more floor positions. So my left leg is in and my right leg is just into my chest. And I could just have my arms around my leg and I'm just sitting. So contemporary yoga, classic yoga, in my opinion, you're not on the floor enough. You're not sitting in positions long enough. You know, it's a more meditative practice. It's really subtle. But if you have problems with your knees, your problems with your hips, I would definitely spend 5-10 minutes a day or a few times a week just in really basic positions like I'm in. So I'm going to take my right leg forward and then I'm bringing my left leg in. And then as I bring it in, I'm just going to be in this basic seated position. So as I'm here, this could be the pose. Right? Any of these positions can be good, but just to get, like I said, being on the ground will help you in softening the tissues around the knees, around the feet, and around into the hips. So I'm just bringing the legs straight forward, and I could sit on something higher, right? Nothing, this is a very basic. My knees could be bent. I could extend from my lower back more. I could have hands on blocks. And then I'm taking the legs up, but then I'm going to take the right leg in, and then the left leg is bent. If you have like a soft like futon mat, that's really great to do. Say you have a really hard bed. Obviously don't have too many blankets on the bed, but you could do these positions on grass. Really good. The more challenged you are in terms of your soft tissues, say you're very tight, or you're just really struggling in your feet or your knees or your hips, be on a softer surface. And then as your body gets healthier, then you can be in more complex positions, right? Where you could it's actually better eventually on a harder surface. So I'm going to take the legs back up, the right leg back up, and then I'm just pushing through the hands, just in an upright position. My feet could be more forward, they could be further back. The further my feet are back towards my hips, it assimilates more of a squat, right? Like an Eastern squat. I'm going to extend my right leg forward and my left leg is in. And I'm just doing this so that you can see me. But, you could be on your mat, most likely if you're, a yoga practitioner, you're on a mat. What you could do is you could set up 2 mats next to one another for space. But if you really need a softer surface, having one on top of the other is probably better. And they make really thick mats too. So say you really see the benefits in this, you could invest in a thicker mat. And I have like these grappling mats, and they're called puzzle mats. And you can take them apart. You can put them underneath like a bed or something like that. That's what I do. So my left leg is forward and then my right leg is in. And I'm not so much focusing on alignment. If you have difficulties in the knees, if I pull the skin back, right, and I create more space between the knee, makes a world of difference. So if you really have a hard time folding your knee in, you could put your hand there. You could use a hand towel. Really basic, but you'll start to see how the body will adapt and you'll have better mechanics and the knee won't hurt so much. So just take a few deep breaths. If you're slouching, from time to time, sit up more upright. If you have a history of back pain, definitely should be working on posturing up. If you don't really have pain, you don't have to be rigid about being picture perfect, right? So I'm going to take the legs back up into the squat position. I'm pushing through my hands, elevating my chest. I'm going to bring the feet together into a badakanasana. And then I'm using my hands to post up and I'm pushing my knees apart. So it's a little bit more active in this variation. So I'm just guiding the knees further and further away from one another. And then there's times I could just relax, really good up against the wall. This could be the practice, just being up against the wall for, say, I'd start with 2-3 minutes, but then it could be 10 minutes of just this. So I'm going to lift the knees. I'm going to take the legs back out to the sides, right? Again, the knees could be bent. When my knees are bent, I have more lift in my lower back. I'm not sitting back as far in my sacrum, my pelvis. And then I'm going to pull the knees in one last time. So as the knees pull in, I'm pushing my knees out into my arms and I'm elevating my chest. I'm going to look up towards the ceiling. So lifting my chin, lifting my chest, and then looking forward. I'm going to look over the right shoulder and look over the left. And I'm looking center, and then I'm going to release the arms. So my feet are going to be a little bit more separated. My feet are wider than, say, my shoulders. So I'm taking my knees to the right, and I'm in this upright position. So really common with people is that it's a little bit hard on the back knee, right? So you can elevate the knee and still be in the pose. See how far off I am on the side? This makes it easier. So it's okay to be crooked initially because, your hips may not be as mobile as mine, and you might have a pre-existing history in your knee. So it can still be a good pose. You just have to adapt it, make it easier, still use it rather than not use it. And then over time, right, it'll get easier. Some people like the back foot in more like a tuck position. So I'm on more of the top of my foot. So this adds more of a stretch into the foot, the arch, and into the lower leg where the peroneals, the tibialis, these are muscles that can be very tight and can affect the way that you sit on the floor. So I'm untucking that foot. I'm going to take the left knee up and then I'm pushing the knees out for a moment, driving my legs apart. and then I'm taking my right knee forward and down, and then as I bring the knee forward and down, right, I may want to elevate the knee, right? Makes it easier. I may want to be a little bit off to the side where it's not so loaded in my hips. The more I sit upright, the more emphasis will be on rotating the femur in, and it can be a little bit too much into the inside of the knee. But again, it's good on a block. I'd lift it up if I needed that. So just take a couple deep breaths. And then coming back up with the knees. So if you found these positions that I used earlier better, that's what you can stick with. Just stick with these positions. I often say this when I'm teaching group classes, is you don't have to stick to the sequence if the sequence doesn't really help you, right? It's a sequence. Over time, you can certainly use everything, but maybe this basic, in yoga, we call this jhana shirshasana. So the foot is in. If I'm coming forward, then it's more like the classical approach, but keeping my body upright so that it's more accessible for those of you that might have back pain. So I'm taking the knees back up, back into this position. If we can, I'm going to move my knees to the right, slowly taking them up, moving them to the left. Doesn't have to be a full range of motion. Taking them back up, moving them out to the right and down, elevating the left knee, moving the right leg in, taking it back up and going to the left. So as I'm to the left here, just again sitting upright, I'm going to move my left hip forward, and then I'm going to pull it back in space. So as I'm moving it forward, I'm going to create more width between the two thighs, and then it gets a little bit easier. So it's like a very easy frog pose. Like in yoga, it's a common yin position. But I'm going to do some transitions in helping to strengthen the inside and the outside of your, internal and external rotation. So I'm bringing weight into my right hand, then I'm bringing my left leg forward, right? As I bring my left leg back, I'm bringing it down. So if you had something going on in your hand or your arm, you could still do this. You'd post your arm into a wall, right? So you're like, I really need to strengthen my hips. That's how you could do it. I'm taking the left leg forward. And it doesn't have to be a perfect sukhasana, right? You're just bringing it forward in space. I'm leaning to my right side. If my weight's in my left, I won't be able to pick my left leg up. So I have to lean a little bit to my right and taking the leg back. So I'm going to take the knees up, lifting the knees, moving the knees to the left. As I'm here, right, I'm moving my right hip forward in space, and then I'm pulling it back. So notice when you're walking how much your pelvis moves. So if it doesn't rotate, it has a ripple effect. You won't see that the torso moves. You won't see the arms moving much. And it's easy to assume that it does, but for people, it really could move better. That's why I'm doing this. So I'm moving the weight in my left hip. I'm taking my right leg forward. You could do it without the hands. Not that it's better, but maybe you couldn't use your hands. So I'm taking it forward, basic seated position, taking it back. Your legs obviously have some weight to them. It'll help strengthen the hip. It'll help loosen the hip. One more time, I'm taking it forward and then back, just into the seated position. I'm going to move it back one last time, bringing the knee down, sitting upright, then taking the knees up, right? And pushing my thighs apart. So I'm more, like if you can squat, right, you can squat, right? But just basic stuff for people. And this will lead to eventually being able to squat. It might be that you have to elevate your heels to squat, but you can still squat, right? So I'm going to come onto my knees. So if you have, something going on in your knees, I'd flip the mat up so that it's double ply. I'm going to be on my knees and I'm going to work your toes. So my toes are tucked and I'm sitting back on the heels or sitting back towards the heels. And then I'm moving forward and then I'm untucking the toes and I'm sitting back towards the heels, right? Then I'm moving forward, tucking the toes, sitting back towards the heels. And you can play around with the weight, bring more weight into one side. I'm coming forward, I'm untucking the toes, I'm sitting back towards the feet. And say you want to hold it longer, you could obviously do that. But with people that are really tight in their feet, shorter holds I think are better. So I'm coming forward, tucking the toe, sitting back. As it gets easier, then yeah, definitely, you could hold it however long you want to, right? So I'm going to come back, untuck the toes, and sit back towards the heels. I'm going to sit upright if I can, and I could sit on a block, right? I could have something underneath me, but it's good to sit back, and when you need to come out, you just come forward, just like I had mentioned, right? So I'm going to tuck the toes, sit back on the heels, and maybe sitting upright. And this can be a really difficult position for people, but if you have high arches, this is the better of the two positions. The last position, say you really don't like being in on the tops of your feet, the bones are just so high, they dig into the floor. That's why you need a softer surface. But if you elevate the tibia a bit, like with a towel or a yoga mat, then there's less pressure on the feet. So I'm untucking the toes. One last time, I'm going to sit back on the feet, and then I'm going to come off of my feet. I'm going to stretch my legs forward again, but when my legs forward, my legs are wide, and I'm going to point the foot and scrunch up the toes, and then I'm going to open the toes. I'm going to scrunch them up and open them up, scrunch them up, open them up. So actively creating an arch, and then opening, scrunching them up, opening, scrunching them up, and then opening. And then I'm going to go to the left side. So same thing, but you can find a rhythm to that, scrunch them up. So you could do this for time, you could do it for repetition, but it's easy to assume that you don't need it, but it's very, very good for the feet. So you want the feet, you want the toes obviously be able to move. You're manipulating the joints in flexion, right, when you're scrunching them up, and then you're extending them, and that's, assimilating walking. So I've been wearing more and more of a minimal shoe, and it's been remarkably good for my feet. And with that, there's brands that are thicker, and that's what I would start with. And then you could go to like a more like traditional where there's really nothing to the shoe. And when you're walking in these shoes, you really want to walk lighter because there's not a lot to them, but so good for the feet. If you have space where you can just walk barefoot on grass or sand, that's obviously a good thing. But if you're in a city, you'd obviously want to cover your feet just so that you're not cutting your feet up. So just a couple more on this side, and then I'm opening. But it could be done flex. I'm just giving you like the shorter version of this, but you could spend more time on it. I'm going to go back into a badakanasana. So the knees are wide, I'm pushing my legs apart. I'm sitting up a little bit, so I'm actually trying to sit towards the feet a little bit. And then I'm bringing my hips down, I'm taking my legs up. So I'm going to take my knees to the left, like we did earlier, but I'm going to use my hands or not. So if I'm here, but I'm going to try to sit toward my foot, like I'm sitting on top of the foot. And then I'm coming back down, right? I'm moving back up on top of the foot. Individually can be easier and can be more therapeutic because you might need it on one side more than the other. So I'm coming down, I'm lifting myself up. Use your hands, of course, to get yourself up, and then bringing yourself down. I'm going to take the knees up. I'm going to go to the right side, and then as I'm here, so if you've never done this before, have your hands on blocks, push yourself up and then sit on the foot. So I'm sitting basically on the foot. So it's just underneath my pelvis. Then I'm bringing myself down. Then I'm taking myself up. And then down. Again, on carpet, something soft. It's much easier on yourself. Don't kill yourself. Like I said, a hard surface is really good, but at first it's not. It's going to be too much for most people. So then I'm sitting back down. So I'm going to stretch the legs forward, and I'm just going to have my knees bent and push through the hands. But maybe you notice a difference in the feet. I can definitely see how my feet have been adjusted just from the position. So I'm pulling my shoulders back, right? Relaxing my shoulders. One more time, I'm going to retract. And you don't have to lift up, but I'm going to lift up just one time, just to have some activity. So I'm lifting the hips, pushing through the heels. I'm widening the shoulders, right? But I'm pulling them back. Right? I'm going to take the head back if I can. And then I'm bringing the head forward, the hips down. And then this is where I'll use the strap. So if you have a strap, a yoga strap, if it's in a loop, you can make it into a loop. If it's not in a loop, you can create the loop. So once I take it around my back and my shoulders, I'm going to have it just underneath the shoulder blades. Then the right leg is up into the strap. I'm extending it forward. So for some, this will be the stretch. The leg won't be straight. Over time, you can get the leg to be more straight. You can push the foot into the strap. I'm pulling a little bit on the strap just to straighten out my foot. It's okay if the foot's crooked, right? But if I'm moving my leg in space, it adds a different stretch to the calf muscle and into the hamstring and into the hip. So you might want to find an angle of the foot that's actually better for yourself. So I'm leaning back into the strap. I'm going to bend my knee, and then I'm going to straighten out through the leg. I'm going to bend the knee. I'm going to straighten it out. One more time, I'm bending the leg. Again, for someone that's really tight, a motion can be better. So the leg is up. So take 2 deep breaths. And it's, you'll take classes where they're doing long holds. And it's not to say that they're wrong. It's just having some different approaches can be, helpful as well, or useful. So my right leg is down, and then I'm taking my left leg up into the strap, and then I'm stretching the leg forward. But again, maybe it's bent. So if it's really hard to get in the strap is too short. You make it longer. If it's just not much of a stretch in the leg, you make the strap shorter, and you can make it really short, if you wanted to. So I'm pushing the leg forward. I'm lifting the chest, adjusting my upper back, sizable stretch to the back of my leg. I've quite a bit of flexibility in my hamstrings. I still feel a very good stretch in something so simple. So I'm going to bring the leg down. I'm going to try to bring both feet up into the strap. So both legs are forward and up. So then as I push the leg forward, I'm lifting the chest. So if you're really just going for better posture, want to adjust yourself, keep your hands down. You don't want to, fall out of this. But I'm really driving the legs forward, and then I'm going to relax it a bit. And I'm driving them forward. I'm lifting the chest, and then I'm bringing them down. And then last time I'm bringing them up. Now, if I can stabilize myself and my hands are forward, I can take my hands up off the floor. Not that this is better, right? It's just a different variation. I'm lifting, I'm extending, then I'm bringing the hands down. I'm going to take my feet out of the strap. And then as I'm here, I'm going to come out, and I'm going to have my legs wide again with my yoga block. So as I'm here, difficult thing for people in sitting is getting the pelvis to move forward. So my block is forward into my pelvis, and I'm moving it forward, and that will help you get forward, because a lot of times people will be sitting back too far. You sit on a higher surface, that helps. But I'm going to be using my block to do some different angles and stretching. So I'm going to slide the block forward, and then I'm bringing it up. Then I'm going to slide it out to the left, just for a moment, bringing myself up. I'm going to slide it to the right, and you'll see again which side is actually more difficult for you. So if for me, I'd spend more time on my right side today. Right? But for you, maybe it's better to just come forward, straight forward, and sliding it back up. Forward. Each time you go into the slide, it's going to get a little easier, right? Initially, it can be really hard. And I just see people when they do this, they just sit and sit and sit, and it kind of stays the same. So you really need more load. So I'm sliding it forward. I'm sliding it back. I'm bringing it on a slight angle to the left, and then back up. I'm going to go back out to the left, a little bit of a different angle, and then it just changes the quality in the spine. Bringing it up. I'm going to slide it further than my foot. And to go further, like anything, it's not going to feel good. It's going to be difficult. Let's say that. It's not, you're going to be breathing heavily. It's going to be really hard. But as it gets easier, then you can calm yourself down. You can use, more of a calming breath. But first, it's going to be, challenging. Same thing with increasing your strength level. It's difficult, right? Just one more time forward. And then sliding it back. So I'm going to use a similar technique that I did with the strap, but just to counter that. My legs are going to be in, and then my left leg is going to be bent. I'm going to get my armpit to match my knee, and then I'm pushing the foot forward into the hands. Right? I'm pulling the leg back in space to stretch out my back. My right leg could be bent. If it's difficult for you to get your arm above your knee, try for a few seconds, and then just be okay, just relax, try to come back up into it, and each time you'll get a little bit further. But if you're always here and you're not really trying to get into, look further along into the pose, it will always stay the same. So you have to use more effort to go further. So you can bring the foot down. I'm going to take the right leg back in space so the armpit and the knees together, pushing the foot forward into the hands. I'm elevating my chest. Like I said, if I can't get this, I'm going to let go of it and then try again. And each time, right, you're going to adjust the soft tissues of the body, and most likely, most people can do this. If it's really hard on your hip, your knee could be much wider than your pelvis or your torso. So my legs out to the side, it's typically easier for people. And then you can bring that foot down. So just go back to having the hands beside you, lift the chest, push through the feet, elevate the pelvis, widen the shoulders, move the weight around, and then bringing the hips down. And we'll just come into a seated position. So really easy seated position. I'm going to take my right hand to the right, reaching my left hand to the left, and then I'm just leaning back in space. So just trying to find the right angle. And it could be really high, right? High up could be better. But I'm going to go lower with my elbow just for a few seconds. And then I'm lifting the elbow. And then I'm lowering. You could certainly stay here. And then coming up. And then one more time down. I'm going to stretch the left arm to the left and let the head move away from the arm. And then elevating myself up. I'm going to recross the legs. And then I'm taking my left hand to the left. Again, start really high up. Don't be so far out. Move the weight forward slightly. See that angle? Move it slightly back. Get to know yourself better, right? Finding the best angle. And then as I'm here, I'm going to move down towards my left elbow. And you'll see that the sides can be different or trickier to do. It's very common. Then I'm elevating the elbow. The hand could be down too. Putting your hand on like a chair is really great, or piece of furniture. I'm lifting myself up, And then I'm coming down. Abdomen is in. Arm could be out to the side. And then I'm bringing myself up. All right, and I'm just going to sit upright. Eyes could be open, eyes could be closed. All right, I hope you feel well from that class. You could let me know how it goes. You could leave a comment, and if you had any questions, you could I could answer those questions if you left a comment in the comment section. So if you're a subscriber, great. If you're not, you could subscribe, and then you'd be notified when you would get a new video in terms of when I would upload something. These classes are weekly. All my information is on my website. If you'd like to take a class with me tomorrow, I have a class tomorrow. It's 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, and that's through Zoom. So you register for that class on my website. It's jonwittyoga.com. All right, have a beautiful weekend. Happy Mother's Day. It's a very special time for me and my family, so I'm very happy to be celebrating this weekend. All right, take care of yourselves.